And now, ladies and gentlemen, Skywalker.
Hi, and thanks for tuning in. It's so great to be back. And thank you for that wonderful introduction, Jim Davis. So nice to hear that. And thanks for tuning in to the Radio Memories YouTube channel while we've been on a hiatus for 2 weeks. We appreciate that. I certainly do. It's good to have you back. And we've got a great show for you today. Radio legend, Southern California radio legend, Ted ZIEGENBUSCH, best known for his time at KOST 103.5. Of course, he just retired in 2020. And boy, such a long career there. But, Ted has had a long career before that. And today he is here to share his radio memories. And joining us from his home in beautiful Orange County, California, Ted ZIEGENBUSCH. That's right, radio legend Ted ZIEGENBUSCH joins us now. Ted, it's so good to see you.
Good to see you, Dave.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been quite a while. Yeah.
So what's going on in your world?
Well, I finally retired from KOST in January of 2020. And so many people said over the years, as we discussed retirement, I said, I think I'll just hang on until they ask me to head out the door. And different people like Johnny Kay said, Ted, they're never going to tell you to go. I mean, you're willing to do any show, anytime. You can do love songs, you can do mornings.
Everything.
It's never going to happen. But my wife was getting impatient, because we talked about it for a couple of years. And I think we were allowed to travel. I say allowed because I told KOST in the summer of 2018, I said, I'm thinking of going to Europe. My wife was a caregiver for a 103-year-old man who passed away. And he set aside money for us to take his ashes to Latvia. And I said, I had even, where is Latvia? It's one of the Baltic states. And right. So I said to KOST, I'm not going to let my wife go by herself. I want to accompany her on this trip. It's a bittersweet trip, but I would like to go. And since we're going to be over there, I'd like to stay a few extra days, maybe see London for a few days before we head home, because we had to fly in and out of there. So I said, I understand if it's time, because I've been here since 1982. If it's time, I understand. I've had a nice run. I'll miss all of you. And they said, oh, no. Take your time off. I said, I'm going to be gone a little over a month, 5 weekends. Oh, that's okay. And I was in shock when they said that,
I would be too.
Yeah, in radio, people don't give you that many weeks off. But, finally it was time, and we both agreed that, it was a good time to, and the weird thing is that realizing it was January of 2020, it was just days before, everything just collapsed from COVID. So I felt fortunate to leave when I did. They were more than happy to realign the staff. I was not the only one that left at that time. And people have asked me if I miss it. Radio is all I've done since I was a kid. And I miss it in some respects, but I had to prepare myself mentally. I knew I couldn't do this. I know Charlie Tuna worked into his 70s, and look at Art LeBeau. My God, what a machine, that he just keeps going. But I said, I'm going to want to enjoy life, and I'm not going to want to have regrets that I didn't retire sooner. I've been a program director. I've been a consultant. I've done mornings in LA. I did the love songs thing for decades. And what else am I going to do?
Let's take a trip down in the Wayback Machine.
Okay.
Let's go back. And so where do you start in your career?
this goes all the way back. Well, I could go back even further, but when I was 12 years old, the Cayman out of San Bernardino, KMEN, came on the air on my birthday in March 10th. And I felt like it was a birthday gift to me. I mean, the guys were so fun, so exciting to listen to. And we all got wrapped up in it as young kids. And I was listening to Bill Watson on afternoons, and he was a really popular guy. Called him Mr. Kicks. I don't know what, I'm not sure what that ever, how that ever went together with Bill Watson. But he was quite an entertainer. And I thought, I want to do a favor for these guys. I want to do a radio poll, a survey, and call people and ask them what radio station they're listening to, and come to find out that the most popular station at the time was Cayman. And keep in mind, I'm 12 years old, so I'm not sure, what kind of response I got from many of them, but most of them gave me an answer. And I completed the poll, and I was determined that I wasn't going to quit till I had 1,000 calls. I don't know why that number. I guess I thought, that's the perfect.
It was a big number.
Yeah, it was a big number, especially when you're 12,
Mm-hmm.
to hit 1,000. So I completed it. Cayman, hands down, was the number one selection. KFXM, the other top 40 in town, was number 2. And the news stations and beautiful music, or adult contemporary, whatever they called it. I guess they called it adult standards in those days, Vicky Carr and stuff like that.
Right,
But
right.
I finished it up, and like a little 12-year-old kid, not with crayons, probably with pen, I put together this little scroll that said, congratulations to the Cayman for the winners of my telephone poll. And Cayman used to take a lot of phone calls in those days from listeners.
Sure.
The interaction with the audience, I think, is what put them over the top.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Audience interaction, that local, once again, connecting with the audience. And this is what radio doesn't do anymore.
Oh, we all miss that.
Yes.
I'm speaking as a universal we, speaking for other people, but I think it's true that, and that's what I was doing on the Love Song show on KOST, was interacting with the audience, taking phone calls, letting their voices get on the air, letting them share their feelings. And so I called up Bill Watson, and I said, hey, I did this survey, and you guys are way number 1. And keep in mind, they had only been on for about a year at that point by the time I called him, maybe not even that long. And he not only took my call, he said, well, could you come down to the radio station some afternoon? I said, yeah, I'm in school, but after school I could come by. And so my parents drove me to the station. We made an arrangement, and I went in and asked for him, and he said, come into the control room with me. Well, I'd never done anything but look inside a window, from outside a radio control room. So here I was standing in the control room with Bill Watson, and he says, we're going to go on the air and explain this. I said, oh, okay. And he tells the audience, I've got a guest in studio here. His name is Ted, and he's done this radio thing. Ted, tell them about the poll. And my mind went, poll? What poll? As a 12-year-old, I don't know that a survey or calling houses is a poll. Sorry, but I was 12.
Right.
And so I guess I looked dumbfounded long enough that he said, the survey, oh, okay. So I said, well, we called these 1,000 people and came in one. I can't remember the percentage. It wasn't even close. I mean, and we didn't coach. I didn't want to coach anybody. I wanted to know the truth. And so he said, well, thank you for that, Ted. And just for doing that, you have won the Bill Watson Spike Award. I had no idea what that was. I found out later, Bill Watson used to work on the railroad, and he had old railroad spikes. When he left the railroad, he kept a big box of them and old rusty nails that he would give you. Here's your Bill Watson Spike Award.
Consider it an honor. Yeah.
When I saw him decades later at a K-Men reunion, and we're talking, a long time, like 35 years later, I said, I was that little kid that he goes, oh my gosh, why didn't you tell me that when you sat down? Because I just sat down like a fan for a while. I didn't want to launch on him. And he just, you could see it was, again, it's like when you walk up to your elementary school teacher and you've showed up at her 92nd birthday and you go, remember me, I'm Teddy from, 50 years ago. And I think it was shell shock for both of us, but it was fun. And that's where it started. Once I had seen the inside of a radio station control room, and it looked like you were an air traffic controller with all the stuff you're doing and all the fun and answering phones and entertaining people, I was hooked.
Yeah, you're just locked in for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I asked him if there was anything I could do around the station to help. In those days, I don't think there was a word intern. You were maybe called the gopher or
the gopher.
Something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the funny thing is, I got home. My mom said, "Do these guys know you're 12 years old?" I said, "Mom, I don't know, but they were really nice to me." And next thing I knew, I was hanging around there a little bit. I would go by after school and they would let me in because they knew me. They had seen me, and the boss, Bill Watson, knew me. And so I just kind of, shuffled papers, did things for them. And then the regime, as always happens, the regime changed around 1967. And suddenly everybody I knew was pretty well gone. And I remembered that they had promised me a bunch of record albums for something I'd done for them. I don't know if I'd counted votes for their annual countdown show or something like that, but it was worth asking about. And I said, I understand Bill Watson's not here anymore, but I did a bunch of work for him and he promised me some albums. And they said, okay, we'll look into it. And Brian Lord, who is another legendary, he was popular not only in San Bernardino, but became like the Casey Kasem of Canada for decades. Brian Lord said, I'll take care of you, kid. Come on by and we'll pick out some stuff and give it to you. So he gave me a bunch of albums. And in some ways I met Johnny Darren and other people at that time. And so I was I'm sure I was the little pest,
This is the oddest thing because both you and I started at 12 years old.
Yeah.
I started at KGIL in the Valley, also the little pest. Johnny Darren was working there when I started there. Rick Scary allowed me to have a career and to go there, stay there till I was 15 and a half when I went to KTNQ 10Q. And then I lucked out into a gig, an on-air gig, because they were selling the station and they wanted to get rid of their public affairs. And Mike McVeigh gave me Sunday morning, 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. But it's really odd, the same people and the same timeline that you and I kind of started and the same people. I'm a little bit. Yeah, I'm a little bit younger than you are. Just in you naming the timeline, just really odd as I'm hearing your story. It's just really strange. And I've been to the Cayman studio so many times because I did afternoons at 99.1.
Oh,
and we were in the same probably building you went to in San Bernardino at the time that I was working at 99.1, which was at the transmitter in San Bernardino. I had to throw that in there because it's just a really odd connection.
It is, and I tell people, people will say to me, well, you think other people could get started that way today? Interesting question, because no, I don't think so, because of the concerns, for insurance, having somebody there that's not an employee. I know for years with iHeartRadio, unless you were a broadcaster journalism student and you were getting credit, in addition, you had to be getting credit for being around the radio station as an intern.
Right.
There wasn't any other way to shadow people or learn the business. And
no, they wouldn't allow you in the radio station.
Yeah, and I sat in, and suddenly, around 1968, it really kicked in for me when Johnny Helm, who was the nighttime guy, took a liking to me, and he told me they were thinking of doing something called high school news. And once a week, one of the San Bernardino high schools would come on, and you would get a minute to 90 seconds to talk about what was going on campus. And he said, we haven't really put the word out yet, but would you like to do your high school? And I said, yeah, are you kidding me? And he said, okay, well, I'll tell the program director that I've found somebody already for that school. And so I started doing that and hanging around after I did my report. And Johnny Helm let me, stay in the control room, watch him go through all the motions. I would be there for a couple of hours. And then even when they finished doing the student reports from the high schools, Johnny let me hang around. And I said to him one time, I said, you were like my first mentor in this business. What in the world led you to allow a high school kid you didn't know, hang around the radio station? He said, I don't think in my career I'd ever seen anybody as interested, as passionate, as determined as you were to be a part of radio.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he never said for a guy that didn't have a radio voice, because the joke around the station was some of the guys thought, hey, cute little high school kid over there wants to be on the radio, but he's got a tenor voice. He's never going to be on the radio. In fact, Harry Scarborough, who later became a boss jock on Kino in Fresno and KGB in San Diego, Harry worked at Cayman for a while. And Harry said to me, Ted, why do you want to be in radio? And I said, I love music. I just love the music. I mentioned a few other things. And he said, I think the radio business should be, you ought to be a promotions person for a record company. That's what you ought to do. And I could tell what he was doing. He was not trying to discourage me, but kind of said, I don't think you're set out for this.
Subtly saying to you,
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
And I didn't let that bother me. I mean, Harry and I stayed friends for years. I helped him produce an air check that got him the job in San Diego. So there was no sour grapes there. But
no, if you're determined, nothing will distract you.
Right.
It's like Ken Levine. Everybody told him he had a horrible voice. What a terrible thing to tell a youngster, who's determined to be in the business. And how many of us were told that, and finally, one of the greatest things that Ken says when he signs on 10Q is, finally on a big LA radio station with my voice, it's Beaver Cleaver on 10Q, and it's like, KHJ would never hire him in a million years because he didn't have that KHJ sound.
Yeah.
So, if you're determined, it doesn't matter. And you will prevail. And we've seen that.
You don't have to have all the assets lined up. But luckily for me, Mark Ford, who later went to work for Drake Chenault and helped produce the history of rock and roll, Mark was the midday guy at Cayman while I was there. And when they actually gave me my own weekend show on Cayman, and when I knew that there was a good possibility I wasn't going to get to hang around, because they were starting to go through some management changes, and the morale around there was getting pretty low. And I thought, I better ask for some letters of recommendation before the whole thing collapses around here. And some of these guys, because I'd seen guys disappear, just gone.
Oh, yeah.
And guys that I admired, guys that well, see, as a kid, you don't realize that that's the business, that's going to happen. But I was smart enough, right. I said, Mark, would you write me a letter of recommendation? And he wrote me the nicest letter. And in it, he said, I don't know what it is about Ted. He's young, but he's so relatable and he's so down to earth, and the audience just loves him. I almost hate picking up the request lines and hearing people say, when is Ted coming on? And I thought, I said, Mark, you didn't have to. He said, no, that was heartfelt. And I said, well, that means the world to me, because Cayman was the only place I had worked at that point in my career. Mm-hmm. I was there for a long time as a kid, finally got a show. They made me the music director of Cayman and assistant PD when I was 20. And all the guys were at least 8 to 10 years older than me. And I had an incredible start in my hometown. Believe me, I feel like the luckiest guy in the world. I don't know what they saw. That's why I hold on to those words from Johnny Helm. You just had a lot of passion and determination. And I could tell you really loved this business. You weren't doing it for the money. You weren't doing it, to meet girls. It was because you loved radio.
The passion. It was oozing out of you. And those guys could see it in us. Yeah. And they really could. Well,
willing to do anything and hanging around late hours. They knew I could have been with a girlfriend. I could have been with my buddies from baseball. But here I was hanging out at the radio station, not worth a whole lot other than doing the coffee run or getting a Coke out of the Coke machine for the guy that's on the air. But
whatever it was, you were there, man. You were there. All of us, see, guys like us, the radio geeks, and there's no longer. I mean, we're forgotten.
I know you want to say a dying breed. You don't need to say that, but
yeah, we're extinct. We're extinct. We really are.
Yeah, and there are many people who believe, that radio lives on and it's just as good as it ever was. They don't know. They don't know what we lived through. When there was no internet, when you were competing with television, and that was about it.
Mm-hmm. And you had the audience's attention. You had their full-fledged attention.
Oh, absolutely.
And they would drive out to the radio station. You really had fans. There were people who literally were your fans and would do anything and go anywhere to see you. Yeah. It was amazing. It was an amazing time in radio. And just in the country, this last presidential election, and I'm not going to get political. I'm just going to state something that's a fact. That for the first time, I noticed that they didn't say, and tune in your radio. They talked about television. They talked about social media. They told you to go everywhere But for the first time, and you can go back because it's on YouTube, everything's on YouTube. You can go back and look.
Mhm.
But there's no mention for the first time ever of radio.
Wow.
Honestly. And it was so loud to me, who's been noticing that stuff for years, that I said, God, this is the first year no one's mentioned radio.
Mhm.
Because they said you can get your facts, you can get your election results, you can go there and this and this and this. And they mentioned every medium but radio. It's no longer even factored in, which is sad. So where do you go to? Where's your first big gig?
Well, after leaving Cayman, I got into the record business for a little while, working for what they called a rack jobber, and they serviced Kmart's and all kinds of big department stores. I came close to getting a weekend job at KEZY when Arnie McClatchy and Mark Dennis were the leaders there. Mark and I talked about it many times later. Mark said, again, I'm just repeating what people said. I'm not saying that it was necessarily the truth, but Mark said to me, Ted, you were too good for weekends on KZY. And I said, Mark, I was a kid from weekends that came in. How was I too good? He said, I'm not saying that because we didn't hire you, but honestly, you were destined to do more than that. And you'd have been stuck here. You know, people didn't leave signals that got into Orange County and LA. And so I said, well, so I guess I appreciate that. So Quiz, KWIZ in Santa Ana, hired me to do nights during the summer with the possibility that I would get the shift full time. And when the summer came to an end, Earl Trout, who was the PD there at the time, decided to make a different choice. But by that time, I had technically been on kind of in Los Angeles on an AM station and had a lot of fun and had that feeling I was making more money per hour. I couldn't believe what they were. I said, you're going to pay what? I'm trying to think back. It was like 5 times what they were paying us per hour at Cayman in San Bernardino.
Yeah.
And so that was fun. And then one day, my college broadcasting teacher from San Bernardino Valley College, where I took the telecommunications program, both TV and radio, he called me up. He said, Ted, this is Bob Birmingham. I said, hi, Bob. What's up? He said, you know, there's an FM station in San Bernardino that's looking for a morning guy. I know you were on Cayman for a few years. Would you like to get back into radio? Would you be interested in doing mornings over there? Nice. Yeah, I mean, I want to get back on the radio if there's a chance to get back, especially in my hometown. And he said, well, I'll have him call you. And Jim James, who was the program director of KCAL FM, called me up and hired me. I mean, right away. And I did mornings on KCAL. And I said, that was the biggest learning experience in my life. When I went there, I started out, they were a full service station. We did news, we did sports. Mm-hmm. I went out and covered Redlands High School football, Redlands High School basketball. And we also ran the World Series one year. We had hockey playoffs one year. And we played literally everything from the big bands, Glenn Miller and Benny Goodman, to Neil Diamond and the artists that were popular in the 70s. It was the strangest format.
Kind of that full service kind of format that they used to have.
It went way beyond the term full service. So sometimes I thought, what are you going to ask me to do next? But honestly, I threw myself into it and I said, hey, if this is what it is, this is what it is. And I went to the library literally every week for months to learn the big bands, who the guys were, what their popular songs were. And I even went as far as to determine, Vic Damone and Vicky Carr and what were their most popular songs. And Andy Williams and said, we're going to play this stuff. I want to know about it. And that impressed the heck out of the owner of the station. When he found out, he could not believe that this format that he loved, I mean, that's why it was on the station, was he thought it would be fun to do something like that. And so one thing led to another, and we did that for a few years. And then KNX-FM in Los Angeles was kicking butt with that soft sound. And you might recall, they would sneak in soft songs by Glenn Miller. And Glenn Miller stuck in my head. Steve Miller Band.
Right.
They played Wild Mountain Honey, and
it was a very eclectic format.
Yes, and it clapped. They would play Art Garfunkel singing Second Avenue or things like that. And we said to the owner, because the owner's son was the program director, and he desperately wanted to modernize the station. You can't blame him for that. He was my age.
Yeah. But
they were playing rock and roll at night because, hey, that was the thing to do in those days. But we said, is there any chance we could kick it up a notch and do this KNX? I mean, if you want to make some money and want to have some ratings. And we finally convinced him that we could do that. So then that's when we did that format in the daytime and the rock at night. And about the time that KNX-FM started waning and having problems, our ratings started going down. We'd been doing pretty well and holding our own. And we kind of panicked and said, could we go rock full time, like the nighttime? I don't know about that.
Wow.
And at the time, the Superstars format with Burkhard Abrams was really taken off across the country. And so that alone is what allowed us the opportunity to switch to rock full time, album rock. And so KCAL FM launched in the late to mid 70s, and they're still rock today.
And that's when it became album rock, right at that point?
And I was the guy who stayed up all night and changed the library and labeled the albums, and then still went on at 6 o'clock in the morning as Ziggy in the Morning. I was Ziggy in the Morning for the rock format, and did that until 1980, when I was offered mornings at 91X in San Diego. And I guess you could, if you want to say that was really, for me, felt like hitting the big time.
Yeah.
Top 20. I stayed at 91X. Later, they offered me the program director's job at Mighty 690.
So you went from KCAL to 91X doing mornings.
Yes.
Which was in Tijuana.
Yes. And
Tijuana. You got to say it right.
They took me down there during the daytime to show me where the studio was. And I thought, okay, this isn't that far across the border. And
I was there a couple of times. Yeah, it wasn't that far.
No.
And I thought, why can't they have the Mighty 690 at this location too? Because
yes,
I'll let you finish the story, because you became the program director then of the Mighty 690. Now, did you kick it off? Did you kick off the Mighty 690?
No, actually, the consultants,
Frank Felix and Roger Agnew.
Yeah. Felix and Agnew kicked it off. I'm trying to pinpoint it. I think it would have been the late summer or early fall of 1980. I was doing mornings on 91X and thinking there's got to be more than this. I think I was getting to the point where if you had a goal in your head, hey, I want to be a program director by the time I'm 30, I better get to work on this. And so I was desperately looking for a programming job. And Erica Smith, that worked for Atlantic Records, called me one day knowing that I was looking, and she said, Ted, I don't know if you're interested, but they need a program director in Las Vegas for one of the top 40 stations there. Would you talk to the guy?
So when I went to, that's how I got to 690, KLAV, right?
Yeah, KLAV. Alvin Korngold was the owner.
Yes, that's where they sent me, and that's how I got to 690.
Yeah, Rick Richardson was a television guy.
Alvin Korngold was a nut.
Oh, yeah.
You were lucky not to go there.
Well, no, I went.
Oh, my God. Oh, shit.
No, I took the job, and I was actually there for 2 months.
I went there, too.
Yeah.
I was there for 3 months, and then they shipped me off to 690.
Oh, well, see, for me, John Lynch started calling me because we were beating Keno in the ratings.
Oh, John Lynch was our GM at Noble.
Yeah, Lynch called me and said, would you come back and run 690? And I said, what? He said, yeah, we need a real program director. You know, Frank and Roger are fine, but I need somebody to pay more attention. We want to do promotions. So would you come back? And I said, John, I'm happy here. They're paying me well. Hollywood Hamilton, who I didn't know that he would end up being the Hollywood Hamilton we all know and love. Hollywood was doing mornings, and I bumped him off of mornings to afternoons because I needed to do mornings to be able to get my work done and program the station the rest of the day. I hated to do it because he was very creative, even in those days. But John would not take no for an answer. And when he increased the money, offered to put me up in a hotel until we could find a house to rent in San Diego.
Did they ever put you up in the house in Mexico?
No.
God, that was a horrible house.
No. I finally, I thought, now here was my reasoning. I mean, I said to myself, okay, now, what are you doing in Las Vegas? Well, I'm trying to make a name for myself. To do what? To move to a larger market. To do what? To program a larger market. Well, hey, dummy, San Diego's number 20, right around there, and it's a bigger market. It's a much bigger market than Las Vegas. Why are you saying no to John Lynch? In January of '81, I was back in San Diego and running 690. And I didn't realize.
So at this point, I'm still at K Hits 97. This is really funny. Because we're about to miss each other. This is really funny because I'm about to leave K Hits and go to KLAV.
Yeah.
To program for Agnew and Felix. And it's the Mighty 690 format.
Oh yeah.
It's the same Mighty 690 with KLAV instead of the Mighty 690.
Yeah.
Same format.
And the crazy.
This is amazing to me hearing your story because I can't believe we've missed each other every step of the way, but we've paralleled almost every step of the way. And then off to Coast, where you crush KHTZ.
Well, we didn't mean to do that.
Well, you put a lot of people out of work, and that was an amazing thing that happened, and you left Greater Media scratching their head because they put a lot of money into research. And the next time we got together, because I'm sorry, and I didn't mean to stretch this so long and take so much of your time. And we always do this because we end up talking about so much stuff. But I want to invite you back, Ted, and I hope you have time to come back and visit. And I know you're doing kind of renovations with your home right now, and you're doing stuff, and you're kind of busy. But I hope you have time to come back and talk about the Coast days, because
there's so much.
There's so much to talk about, but it's good to get your history and your background, starting in the business. And what an interesting past. that I didn't know anything about, and I hope people found it interesting. And we really want to know about this, KOST, because you've been there since 1982, and you left in what, 2020?
2020, yeah.
Wow, what an amazing run! You should be called the amazing Ted ZIEGENBUSCH. That's an amazing run, and of course, people love your voice. For someone that was told, "Hey, kid, maybe you ought to try something else. Can you juggle?"
Exactly.
But an amazing career. So if you have time, please come back.
Oh, I'd be happy to.
Thank you for your time, ladies and gentlemen. Radio legend, really, he really is, Ted ZIEGENBUSCH. Thank you for your time. Ted, take care of yourself.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it.
What a great pleasure it is talking with Ted ZIEGENBUSCH. And he is as nice of a person in real life as he is on the radio. And I certainly hope he comes back to the show because he certainly has more stories to share. And look forward to having him back. Thank you, Ted. Coming up next week, another great radio veteran, not only on KMET when it was number one, but he was also the program director of KHJ, Rick Scary. He is now also I think he's one of the top 5 most recognizable character actors. So, and he is the guy that introduced me to the wild world of radio at 12 years old. He allowed me into this world, and I am so excited to have him on the show next week. Rick Scary will join us for more great radio memories.
Check out past interviews on the Radio Memories YouTube channel. Click the link.